Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for March 30th, 2018. On today's show, we're going to dive into the latest film and TV news, and that's pretty much it. So, this is Slash Film senior writer Ben Pearson, and joining me today is Slash Film writer Hoai-Tran
Hey everyone.
and Slash Film writer Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
All right, guys, let's get into it. Chris, let's start off by talking about Jurassic World 3. I know you and I guess Jurassic World, the first movie, has something of a negative reputation among the Twitterati, I guess, and I think you and I share the opinion that we kind of enjoyed the first Jurassic World. Who is coming back to direct Jurassic World 3?
Yeah, so Colin Trevorrow, who directed the first film, is coming back to direct Jurassic World 3. And like you said, Ben, I'm not going to say I love Jurassic World, but I feel like the reaction to it was a bit overblown. And when I say reaction, I mean the film Twitter reaction, because the film is a huge hit, so obviously someone liked it. But the film Twitter mindset seems to be that this film is worse than cancer, and I don't know if I'd go that far. But that said, I don't know if I'm excited about him returning, just because I don't know. I kind of like the idea of turning, if they have to keep making sequels of this, which I don't think they should, but if they're going to, I kind of like the idea of turning this into like Mission Impossible, where they keep just bringing in new, exciting directors to helm each installment. But I guess that's not the plan. They're going to just bring Colin Trevorrow back to finish it out, because he originally pitched it as a trilogy.
Right. HT, are you looking forward to this?
I'm one of those who wasn't a big fan of the first Jurassic World. I wouldn't say I thought of it as bad as cancer or worse than cancer, like Chris said, but I was not a fan, and I have yet to be impressed by Colin Trevorrow yet. Although I know that, yes, this was basically planned from the beginning, and he helped with the structure, I think, of Jurassic World 2. So it was probably inevitable. I'm not too crazy about the news.
It's interesting that he is coming back to direct it. So he's sort of bookending this Jurassic World franchise, very similar to the way that J.J. Abrams is bookending the new Star Wars trilogy. And of course, Trevorrow had his own run-in with Star Wars, where he was originally supposed to direct Episode 9 and then ended up getting booted off of that movie. So I guess he's returning to the fold that he's familiar with. I know that producer Frank Marshall and a lot of the people that Trevorrow worked with on the first Jurassic World really liked, the way that he worked on that movie. So I'm not sure where the disconnect came exactly with the Star Wars scenario, but it seems like he's going to go back to familiar territory here. And I mean, I feel like Trevorrow's got some potential, and I feel like he's learned a lot of lessons from the mistakes that he's made in the past. So I don't know. We'll see how this goes. HT, let's talk about Adam Sandler. Before we talk about his next movie, I guess, or potential next movie, what are your thoughts on Adam Sandler as a performer in 2018?
So I've never been hugely impressed by Adam Sandler, mostly because I've kind of associated him with his goofball movie roles that we see in Grown Ups, Grown Ups 1, Grown Ups 2, and all of the Netflix films that he's produced and starred in. But he did impress in last year's The Meyerowitz Stories, which was a Noah Baumbach movie that actually earned Adam Sandler some faint Oscar buzz. I will say I haven't seen the Meyerowitz Stories yet, but I know that he has the potential to be a good performer based on his performances in Punch Drunk Love and even Funny People. But he just kind of I don't want to call him lazy, but I feel like a lot of the movies he does do recently have been sort of paycheck movies,
Yeah.
or at least an excuse for him to take a free vacation to Hawaii. But with the Meyerowitz Stories, it seems like he's on some sort of creative comeback, or at least a creative resurgence, in which he maybe is taking himself more seriously as a performer. So, which is why this new development is so intriguing. So essentially, the Safdie brothers, who were responsible for the really great and grimy crime thriller Good Time last year, starring Robert Pattinson, they're reportedly eyeing Adam Sandler as their star of the new movie Uncut Gems. It was originally going to star Jonah Hill, but they're reportedly looking to replace him with Adam Sandler.
So I have not seen Good Time, and I don't
So
know
good.
much about the Safdie brothers, but yeah, it's definitely on my list of things to see, and I'm bummed that I didn't get to it before the end of last year because I saw it pop up on a lot of year-end lists where it was, a critical favorite, and people seem to really enjoy that movie. Chris, did you see Good Time?
I did. It's very good. It's also a very anxiety-inducing movie. Like the whole movie is like nonstop problems that Robert Pattinson's character is getting into. But it's very good film. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah,
Okay.
when I first saw it, I didn't know if I liked it or not just because uh I was in such discomfort the entire time while watching it, but it really sticks with you at the end.
And Uncut Gems is a Martin Scorsese produced movie, right?
Yes, it's going to be produced by Martin Scorsese and is written by the siblings' frequent collaborator Ronald Bronstein, and it's going to be about the corrupt diamond district of New York City. So yet another sort of gritty crime film that the Safdie brothers are very familiar with.
Yeah, I sort of mirror your thoughts about Adam Sandler, HT, and I feel like this definitely has potential to be sort of a movie that, yeah, like you were mentioning, he would take himself a lot more seriously, and it could be like a career turn for him that, something that marks a dramatic shift from what he's typically known for. So I've always been a fan of actors stepping outside of their bounds and sort of spreading their wings a little bit. And this seems like definitely an opportunity to do something unlike anything Adam Sandler's done in a long, long time. So yeah, I guess we'll have to see how that goes. Do we know anything about when this one is going to be filming? Because I know that the Safdie brothers are also in talks to direct a remake of 48 Hours, I think was the last I heard.
Yes, they're in talks to direct that. We don't have any more information about this movie other than the information that I just shared with you now. So it's all sort of in the air. So we're not even sure if Adam Sandler will sign on for this, but it's an interest. It would be really exciting if he did.
Yeah, for sure. Fingers crossed on that one. So let's talk about Kate McKinnon, the star of Saturday Night Live. Variety has a new report that Kate McKinnon is teaming up with Danny Boyle, the director of Slumdog Millionaire, and Steve Jobs for a new comedy that is untitled, but the script is being written by Richard Curtis, who's the guy who wrote Love Actually, which I know HT is a big fan of, and About Time, which I love that movie, and I despise Love Actually, as I've mentioned on this podcast before. This is quite the trio. We don't know much about the film yet. We know that the story is going to be music themed and set in either the 1960s or the 1970s, but we don't know who any of the cast members are going to be playing. In the film, we know that Baby Driver star Lily James is going to be in it, and EastEnders star Hamish Patel is going to be in this movie too. I've never seen EastEnders, so I don't know who that person is, but the idea of McKinnon, Curtis, and Danny Boyle making a comedy together is certainly an unexpected thing, and as somebody who essentially sticks through seasons after season of SNL just for Kate McKinnon, I'm excited to see her step into a larger role in a big comedy like this. Do either of you have any thoughts about Danny Boyle, a director who's not really known for comedies, directing something like this, and Kate McKinnon starring in it?
I think it's a strange combination, but I'm not mad at it. I actually really like it. Danny Boyle doing a comedy is something that I haven't really thought of in a while, but there are sparks of comedy, like veins of comedy in a lot of his movies, Trainspotting especially. So yeah, I think that this could be a really out of left field but really exciting project.
Chris, have you seen SNL? Do you watch that show regularly?
I do not, but I do like Kate McKinnon a lot, so I want her to do more movies. I want her to be in all the movies, and I will happily see them. So I don't have anything against this film.
Awesome. All right, so Chris, I know you're a big Stephen King fan, and yesterday after we recorded the podcast, some news broke about a new Stephen King movie adaptation. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so James Wan and Roy Lee, James Wan, who directed The Conjuring, and Roy Lee is one of the producers on another Stephen King adaptation, It, are teaming up to do a new adaptation of Stephen King's novel, The Tommyknockers. This was previously adapted into a miniseries, so now they're trying to turn it into a new movie. They're basically shopping the project around to both studios and streaming places like Netflix to just see who wants to buy it. The Tommyknockers is not a really great Stephen King book. Even Stephen King himself has said in recent years that he really thinks it's a terrible book. He wrote it at like the height of when he was dealing with like drug addiction and alcohol addiction. So it's kind of a mess. And in retrospect, he's looked back at it now that he's sober and he said, I wrote that in a bad time of my life, so I don't really like it that much. But that said, there are good ideas in the book, so maybe they'll be able to turn it into a pretty good movie. I'm all for as many Stephen King adaptations as possible, so I'll definitely give this a chance when and if it comes out.
Mm-hmm. I saw somewhere that the Tommyknockers is like one of his most popular books. Is that right? Even though it was written at this sort of bizarre period in his life.
I've never heard that. If that's true, I don't know what to make of that because it's really not good. I mean, he's written so many books, and I don't know. This is not one of the better ones.
Okay.
And this is one of the books that he doesn't remember writing too, right? I think you shared an article about that, Chris.
That was an Onion story.
Okay, I thought that was a real article. Okay, I'm sorry.
But it is actually true that the book Cujo, he wrote that while he was dealing with drugs, and he actually doesn't really remember writing that. So that actually is something that's happened to him, where he has written a book in the past he does not actually remember writing. So.
Man, so we don't know who's going to actually direct this. You said that Wan is supposed to be producing it, right?
Yeah, there's no word on a producer. That's another thing. I'd be a lot more excited if James Wan were directing this, just because I really like James Wan's horror films. But since in recent years he's gotten into other genres. He directed Furious 7, and he's making Aquaman now. But I'm always hoping he'll return to horror, just because I really like his horror films.
All right, so let's move on to our next story, and that is an Anne Frank drama directed by The Handmaid's Tale director Reed Morano. HT, tell us about this one.
So Reed Morano has been sort of in the headlines lately because of rumors that she may or may not be directing a Star Wars film. She has put down those rumors for now, but she has been tapped to helm Keeper of the Diary, which is a drama about a Holocaust victim, Anne Frank. So Keeper of the Diary is a screenplay that Fox Searchlight won in a 5-studio bidding war, and Kenneth Branagh was originally attached to direct and star in the movie, which will follow Anne Frank's father, Otto Frank, as he searches for a publisher for his daughter's now famous diary that she had written while they were in hiding from the Nazis. So Reed Morano has been tapped to direct this film, and this is sort of they essentially got her because her schedule opened up after her current film, the spy thriller The Rhythm Section, was temporarily suspended after star Blake Lively was injured during an action sequence. So it seems like she'll be working on them simultaneously, or working at least on the Keeper of the Diary while they're waiting for the Rhythm Section to get back on track.
Chris, have you seen The Handmaid's Tale?
No, I have not. Even though I've heard good things about it, I've avoided watching it just because it sounds so unrelentingly depressing, and I feel like everything is pretty depressing as it is already in the real world, and I don't know if I can sit through it, but one of these days I do want to watch it just because I've heard such good things about it.
Yeah,
it is, Chris.
I recently read the book, and my wife and I just, I think it was yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, pulled the trigger on buying a Hulu subscription just so we could watch the show, because we both read the book, and we've only got through the pilot so far. But HT, I know you're a fan of the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Morano is a really fascinating director, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else she does with Handmaid's Tale so far. I mean, I've only seen the first episode. I think she directed the first 3 of season 1. Is that right?
Yeah, she directed the first 3, and she won an Emmy for directing those as well.
Yeah, and I saw her new movie, I Think We're Alone Now, which premiered at this year's Sundance Film Festival, and I wrote a review about that, so you can check that out on the site. I'll link it in the show notes. But that's really my only exposure to her as a filmmaker. I know she's a longtime cinematographer who's just now breaking into directing, and in a pretty significant way, and she really is sort of a master at crafting atmosphere and mood. So I'm interested to see what that looks like in terms of a story about a Holocaust victim, and finding, how serious they're going to lean into that side of the story, and how much they're going to try to balance that out with the idea of like her dad being the one who's wandering around trying to find a seller or a publisher for this book, if it's going to be a lighter story or something that's a little bit more serious, because we know that she can lean into that kind of storytelling pretty seriously herself. So let's transition into something a little bit lighter, and that is Bill and Ted 3. Chris, we've been hearing a lot about this film. What's the latest?
The Bill and Ted 3 idea has been kicking around for a long time. Entertainment Weekly has this big piece today where it reunites Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves and writer Ed Solomon, who's written all the films, the first two films and the script for the new one. And, they rehash a lot of details we've already known, that William Sadler is returning to play the Grim Reaper. They also mentioned that Steven Soderbergh is producing, which I actually had never heard before, but they actually had brought this up before a few months ago. So that's interesting. But the newest thing they say is Ed Solomon says they're hoping to close a deal with financiers within the next month. So in a month or so, we should know if Bill and Ted 3 is finally happening. So mark your calendars for a month from today, and maybe we'll know.
And I have admitted my embarrassment before in that I've never seen any of the Bill and Ted movies all the way through. But what are your both of you guys? What are your relationships with that franchise, HT?
I love Bill and Ted. I've only seen the first one, but it was a movie that my orchestra teacher in high school dearly loved. So whenever we had a break from practice, he would put that movie on every time. That and Zoolander. So it was a really fun time. Bill and Ted is it's so bonkers and silly and dumb, but I absolutely adore it. And Keanu Reeves does have the hair now, the long hair. So maybe it's an anticipation of Bill and Ted 3, but it's also his John Wick hair, I guess. So
Chris, what about you?
I love those films. I like the sequel, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, more than the first one. And I think I'm the only person in the world who feels that way, but it's a very strange movie where Bill and Ted literally die and go to hell, and it's just something about that film is so weird that I can't help but really like it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm hoping that this happens. Maybe it'll give me an excuse to finally catch up with the first two films. And the last thing that we're going to talk about today is a rumor, I guess, a new report that says that Netflix might buy Luc Besson's company EuropaCorp, which is the French studio that's behind movies like Taken and Valerian. With the Disney Fox acquisition looming over all of these studios in Hollywood, it seems to me that these studios and different entertainment companies are looking to consolidate and sort of shore up their forces as much as possible, especially with Disney getting ready to release their new streaming service that's coming out next year. And Netflix is obviously one of their biggest competitors in that area. And the idea that Netflix might buy EuropaCorp is interesting because Luc Besson is a French filmmaker. He's directed a ton of movies, The Fifth Element and La Femme Nikita and The Professional and all these things. And now they're talking about maybe buying his company and essentially just giving him free reign to direct a handful of movies with like $30 million budgets. So that's a little bit less than what he spent on Valerian, which is his most recent big budget movie. That sci-fi film that came out last year did not perform very well, but because he creatively financed it through some, I guess, unconventional means, the company itself did not really take a huge loss there because all of the loss was essentially spread through a bunch of different investors in that project. But still, the idea that Netflix could pick up EuropaCorp is probably a smart move for them, especially with this Disney deal looming. And it would also grant them access to that company's library of movies like Taken and The Transporter and on all these films. So do either of you have any thoughts about whether or not this is a smart move for Netflix? Is this something that I'm looking at too short term? Should they be thinking more long term, maybe going for a bigger company? Because we know Netflix has some money to spend. They're dropping like $8 billion on original content this year. HT, what do you think?
I'm still confused where Netflix gets their money. I know that they have plenty of investors, but the fact that they're spending billions not just on new original content, but on buying a company like EuropaCorp is astonishing to me. Um, I I think this is a fine move. It kind of is in line with what Netflix has been doing recently in trying to sort of create their own franchises. So I think, and like buying properties from like comic books, smaller comic books, and other independent sort of comic book writers. So it kind of makes sense. They're not going for like the big guns yet. I think they're just trying to build up their sort of reputation as of now.
Chris, any thoughts?
I mean, I'm not overly excited about this, but I guess it's sort of like a wait and see thing where maybe it'll turn out interesting, but I'm sort of neutral on the whole idea at the moment.
So I have not seen Valerian. Did either of you see that movie last year?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, I did.
Oh.
It's on Amazon Prime right now if you want to watch it, but I wouldn't recommend it. I've heard some people say it's worth checking out because, it's inventive and it's weird, which it is. And the first like 10 or 15 minutes of it is pretty cool, but it's not that great. It puts Rihanna in the movie and then wastes her in like 2 scenes and that's it, which, pissed me off. Like, don't, if you're going to put Rihanna in your movie, you have to give her a bigger part. Don't give her like 2 scenes. That's my big thing.
So I take it that you're not excited about the possibility of a Valerian sequel at a much smaller budget then if this deal were to go through?
Yeah, I can't say I'm overly excited about that.
What about Lucy, the Scarlett Johansson movie from a few years ago where she plays like a person who's essentially turns into like an artificial intelligence badass and like wanders around kicking ass all movie. Did you guys see that one?
I have seen it, and I think it was fine. It was interesting. I think it kind of stumbled over its own sort of ambition, but it was a solid action film. Not one of my favorite Besson movies, though.
Yeah, that one was like a surprise hit at the box office, and I think there's been talk about a sequel for a long time, and I'm wondering if this deal goes through, if that might be just enough to sort of push that over the edge and turn that into a Netflix movie. That would be sort of a fascinating thing. We've seen like big movie stars make Netflix movies before. I mean, like Brad Pitt was in one a year or two ago that sort of came and went with almost no fanfare whatsoever, but the idea of
the classic Netflix story.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was called War Machine, that movie. But the idea of somebody who's like a huge star like Scarlett Johansson maybe coming back for a sequel to a movie that performed pretty well internationally, but doing that in a Netflix movie is sort of a fascinating thing to me, because I think that would be their first situation like that. It's sort of a unique platform for them. Hey, it's Ben. Just pausing the show for a second to correct myself. I was editing the podcast and I realized that I completely forgot about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny, which perfectly meets this criteria and stars 2 massive international superstars in Michelle Yeoh and Donnie Yen. So apologies for forgetting that one. Just wanted to set the record straight. Back to the show. Chris, do you have any thoughts about a Lucy 2 going straight to Netflix? I mean, again, this is all just theoretical if this deal goes through, but...
I mean, if it shows up on Netflix, I'll watch it. I liked the first one, but that's one of those movies that I liked it when I saw it, but I've never like thought about it again. I've never been like, I gotta go back and watch that again. But if Lucy 2 shows up, I'll watch it.
All right, same. Well, guys, it's Good Friday, and that's all the news we have. It's been a pretty slow news day as we head into the Easter weekend. So I think that's pretty much going to bring us to the end of this episode of Slash Film Daily. HT, where can we find more of your work online?
You can find me every day at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at htranbui.
And Chris?
I'm also at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at Evangelista413.
And you can find me writing at slashfilm.com as well. I am on Twitter at Ben Pears, and Slash Film Daily is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features you can find at the site. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send your feedback, questions, comments, and concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Our regular host, Peter Soretta, is probably going to be back hosting next week since he's been on vacation in New York this past week, so we're looking forward to having him back. Please be sure to leave your name and general geographic location in your email in case we do read it on the air, so we know how to credit you. And then don't forget, of course, to rate and review the podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends, spread the word. We'll see you guys on Monday.